Hello again, marhaba. This is Dr. Jack Dempsey, American writer and historian living in Crete nowadays. And with me is Muhammad Jihad Ismael, a writer and historian, Palestinian writer and historian from Gaza, living in Deir al-Balah in the Gaza territory. Today is February 17th, 2023, and Muhammad and I, as usual, are always welcoming more people from around the world to show and share their interest in the cause of the Palestinians for justice. Muhammad was born in captivity. His children have never known freedom, and they live imprisoned in the Gaza territory under Israeli apartheid. We know that this place has been closed, locked on them, and surrounded with weapons for 15 years now, as part of their 75-year exile from Muhammad's original village called Shaphir in the middle eastern part of the country of Palestine. And the conditions there in Gaza, as we always try to say up front, are critical, constantly and worseningly critical. Maybe you get 8 hours of electricity, you get no clean water, you have to feed 12,000 people from one truck that comes into Gaza. There's 250 of them daily, but for 2.5 million people. So you can do the math, and they pay exorbitant prices for everything: hospital care, medicines, vitamins. It's as bad as Ukraine or Turkey right now, if you've seen the photos and accounts from there. But this is 15 years that bad. No services, no outside help. And we, Muhammad and I, are trying to help people around the world reach over the wall. If you care about these people, as I think we should as human beings of the world, reach over the wall with us. We have a small program going called Family to Family. I met Muhammad about 2 years ago. We became close friends, and we decided to help him and his family as he was bringing to birth and raising his two beautiful young daughters, and sending them medicine, for example, or some help with canned milk for the first year of their lives. And now we're helping to improve the standards of their living, which is 5 people in one room right now, and it's going to expand to 4 rooms with a better kitchen and toilet facilities and all that kind of stuff. So it's a very wonderful and rewarding experience to reach over all the walls that apartheid Israel has built around them, and to help in any way you wish to help by simply making contact with Muhammad, myself, whatever it takes. And we're very down to earth people. We take no profit from this. There's no banks involved, no NGOs. Your help, which is reduced to financial only because they can't even receive books, let alone a warm sweater for the winter for the children, from my wife. They can't even receive these things. So you can reach still over the wall to help them. And we hope that you'll get in contact via the email here below for both of us, and at my writer's blog, Jack Dempsey Writer at WordPress.com. Jack Dempsey Writer at WordPress.com. I mention it only because there you can see the latest photographs from the work going on, and of course, Muhammad's beautiful family and what these real people are going through, and how courageously, with a powerful smile always on their faces. You should know and experience this for yourself. Last note here to my always too lengthy introduction is: contact your own government. Muhammad and I implore you to contact your own government officials, and tell them that you demand changes in the policies that justify and carry on with apartheid in Israel, to the great detriment of the Palestinian people. It needs to change, and it will be changed. Time and history are on our side. So, Muhammad, on that grandiloquent note, I want to say hello to you and thank you, as always, for your friendship, for all that you tell us about what's happening in Gaza today, and from your immense knowledge of the history of Gaza and Palestine and the whole world, really, like a well read gentleman should be, uh, of the past. So there we are. Anything you'd like to say up front today? We were going to turn back to look at old Shaphir, the village from which your family originally came and from which they were exiled in 1948 at gunpoint. But you were speaking so beautifully about what you have heard from your elders at Shaphir of the old time, the old Palestine, the farmlands and the family life and the tolerance. There was a mosque, a church, and a temple in that village, just as one example of over 500 villages where Palestinians and Jewish people lived largely in peace together. Mohammed, forgive me, I just babble on, but that's the way the energy comes up. So here we are, and hello, and anything you'd like to say, my friend.
Hello, brother. Uh, Thank you so much for this great opportunity. I say hello to all of our friends from all over the world. In fact, the situation in Gaza is as usual. First of all, I want to speak about the weather. The weather these days is very, very, very cold, especially in the night time.
Yes,
Uh, even in the daytime, we have a shy sun in the sky. The sun doesn't send any warmth
you
because
mean ashy
exactly.
sun. It is very weak and cold. Yes, it is the same here in Crete and in the nighttime too. You mentioned to me before that you were managing to keep warm together under some blankets that you were able to get hold of, huh?
Yeah. In fact, we bought some blankets because this is our only option here to make warmth. We cannot make fire because we are living inside one room. If we make fire, it will make run out in the oxygen of the room.
Yes,
So me, my wife, and my children, we will die. So we cannot make a fire. We even we cannot make any kind of warmth by electricity because most of the time we haven't electricity.
yes,
Uh, so our only option is to cover ourselves with so many layers of clothes
yes,
and other layers of blankets.
yes.
Yeah, that's it.
And think of all the people that might be watching that are living, well, relatively comfortable lives as I am. That means that you have a supply of, well, oil or gas or electricity or some way in the modern world to keep yourselves warm. And there you are, huddled under blankets together in a cold room that has none of those resources, needlessly so. That's your condition.
Yes, brother. I think you see the situation now in Syria and Turkey after the recent earthquake. As I told you last time, it's okay. I know I can understand how much they are suffering, but we have to compare. I think they are suffering for maybe several months, 1 year, 2 years, but our suffering is something different. Our suffering is very very old, and there is no hope in the horizon for any kind of finish for our suffering. So it's very old, and it will be extended maybe for long decades in the future. uh, Simply, brother, we are suffering since 8 decades, and there is no chance for salvation from this miserable life. We are suffering since the days of my ancestors who were expelled from Shafir. The same situation that we have nowadays. The same thing. Nothing changed.
Well, I'm going to try to speak very quickly again for our offering of people of a way to make contact with real Palestinian families and help them out directly in any way that you decide at any time when you are comfortable doing that. But to hear Muhammad speak that there is no hope, there is no looking at the sky and thinking that life has any possibilities for the development of your potential. This is the worst and cruelest kind of suffering that is going on. That's the point of Muhammad's distinction between Turkey and Palestine. There is no hope on their horizon. So reaching over those walls with making your own contacts and working out a way to make their life better while they work for hope, that's what we're trying to offer, and we hope people will think about it seriously and simply talk about it with us. And we can speak to all your concerns. And if there's something you don't like, then that's fine. Goodbye, and we'll both try to help the Palestinians our own ways. But please do get in touch and let us help you to help them. So, Mohammed, you were speaking very eloquently last time of the old life in Shaphir. That's where your family was removed at gunpoint 75 years ago, 1948. Now, before that, we were talking about, well, the lay of the land on the village. It's of the village. It's situated on a relatively rich plateau of farmlands that were heavily cultivated with everything from olives and citrus fruits to watermelons. It was very famous for those things, filled with animals and birds. Your family's life went way back into ancient times in the life of the village. And is there anything else you most remember talking about from last time? I asked you what was the most difficult thing about life there. And you said, excuse me, sometimes there were locusts and other natural forces that would make the farming life difficult. And then I asked you something that the people most loved about their life. And I think you said the climate, that the weather was never extreme. It was always a gentle climate in which to live and raise their farms and families. What else do you most remember from the things you've been told about Old Shafir? It's very important that we document what people really remember about the life that was there before 1948.
Yes, brother. Shafir soil was very, very, very fertile. I remember once my grandmother told me something unbelievable. She told me that our land in Shafir was growing a very, very huge size, very, very huge fruits. I mean, according to the size.
Mm-hmm.
She told me that uh, uh, maybe in the late 30s, our land in Shafir used to grow very, very huge fruit of radish. She told me we used to put this fruit on the scale, and the wheat was astonishing. She told me the wheat was 6 kilograms. Can you understand? One
Yeah,
radish, one
that,
radish
that's
was like
about
this.
that's about 14 pounds.
Yeah, yeah. It was in the size of a pumpkin. It
Big
was
as my
it
head.
was 6 kilograms. Yeah, yeah. Even more than the head. Something like that,
Hey,
like the pumpkin. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So brother, believe me, it's true. It's true that Palestine was the holy land which flow with milk and honey. It's a truth, not a legend. It's a truth. Yeah.
it was a place
Uh,
that's very responsive. It was a land that was very responsive to the touch of people who knew what they were doing. And for a later moment here, it's worth noting that most of the Jewish people who immigrated into Israel in the latter half of the 20th century, they were coming from urban environments. They did not know how to farm the land. And it was Palestinian farmers and villagers and townspeople who taught them at first to cultivate the land. So maybe they thought it was what, somehow empty, and that it had no cultivation until they arrived there. It's almost impossible to believe, knowing that their own grandparents had the experience of learning from Palestinian farmers.
of course, brother. Of
Excuse me.
course, I agree with you totally. I think we have to link between what I told you about the huge radish of Shaphir. I think we have to link this with the invention of agriculture in the Neolithic age.
Of
In the
course.
Neolithic, you know very well as a historian, according to so many archaeological theories, the cradle of agriculture was Jericho, was the Palestinian lands, and according to some archaeologists and anthropologists, they believe strongly that the first man who invented agriculture was a woman, not a man, because man all the
Hmm.
time was seeking for hunting, and was making hunt for the cattle, for the animals. But the woman was stable in the home, making food, taking care of children. So a woman, through her stability in the house, used to invent the agriculture.
Yes,
So
and I've
so
seen many anthropological sources that confirm that, with the example that sorting seeds
yeah,
that come from the fields and mixing them together in clever ways to create new, stronger grain that was easier and better for people to grow and to eat, right? Was in the hands of women, and because they needed places to contain the seed and the results of the harvest, they invented ceramics. They invented pottery
yeah, yeah,
to be the first
yes,
holders
yes,
of
brother.
these materials.
Exactly. So the first human who invented who discovered agriculture was a Palestinian woman, and my grandmother was the grand daughter of this ancient woman of Greco who discovered agriculture for the first time in history.
Hmm. Hmm. And
Yeah,
it's also true that too, this reputation of their agricultural skills goes way back to the ancient times. One of the records we have, one of the few written records about the Philistines or the first Palestinians, is that when the Assyrians conquered the Middle East, they removed the Jewish people by and large, but they left many of the Philistines right where they were. You know why? Because they were the masters of the olive tree. They were the masters of the industry to produce olive oil. In the ancient world, there was no substitute for olive oil. Everybody wanted it for many, many uses. And it was the Philistines who they kept in place, even after the conquest, to manage the production of olive oil in that region because they knew it the best. They had probably even brought it there.
exactly, brother. You are talking historical facts.
And
The
Shaphir had a
Yeah,
press, right? That's one of the things we mentioned about Shaphir, that they had a place to use great stones to squeeze the olives and the grain and all that kind of stuff to produce their life. Your family, was it a big family, Mohammed? And did they have pictures on the walls of their ancestors and family together? What were some of their favorite times? Maybe the midday meal? Would everyone come together and share their food? And tell us more what the life was like there.
yes. In fact, brother, according to the stories of my grandmother and grandfather, they told me that in Shafir we had our original traditions. One of our main traditions was the hospitality. We used
Mhm.
always to welcome our guests. We used to slaughter goats, slaughter turkeys, chickens, and make meals of roasted meat for those guests.
Mhm.
So one of our great and original traditions was the hospitality. Even if we don't know this guest should be received in a good way and they used to give him the place to stay in, the drink, the food. So
Yes.
hospitality was one of our great traditions. Beside that, Shafir was an opened place. What I mean by opened, I mean if you want to speak culturally, Shafir was opened. In that time, so many people were learning the foreign languages inside Shafir. Not only the English language, learning English was a must in that time because
Hmm.
Shafir was governed by the British police.
Yes.
This
Yes.
was during the British mandate. So, in order to deal with the British police, to speak with the rulers of Shafir who were British, you have to learn their language. So many people of Shafir were talking English fluently. But beside English, we said it's okay. Learning English was a must in order to deal with the police and with the rulers. But beside that, so many people in Shafir used to seek learning for other languages like German, like French, like
Turkish.
Russian, Turkish, of course,
Yes, so
yeah.
think of it for our listeners that every conqueror who came through this area in the Near East, what was Palestine, every conqueror imposed their culture there, like Crete. And so the Palestinians had to respond with constantly learning a whole new language to be able to stand up for themselves in their political life. I mean, that's a daunting challenge and a brilliant response.
Yes, yes, brother. Yes, yes, brother. The people of Shafir were very, very intellectual. They used to learn foreign languages. They used to read. They used to go abroad in order to join schools and universities. In that time, in all Palestine, we hadn't any kind of universities. So some of them used to go to Egypt. Egypt was the nearest place
Hmm.
if you want to speak about geography. So they used to go to Egypt in order to join the Egyptian universities. So in that time, so many people of Shafir were seeking education outside the country.
So Shafir was a place twice cultivated as a farming village and cultivated in its habits of learning and civilization. That's good to know. I'm not surprised, of course, because Arab civilization has always been very intellectually dynamic and awake. And I understand too that in Shafir there was poetry, there was music, there was dance, there was festival, there was socializing. And one quick thing I'll notice as you were speaking a moment ago about hospitality too, this tells me that when the Israelites came to the country, and as we saw in an earlier episode, reading the Bible closely about when they came to the country, they were told not to socialize, not to eat, not to sleep, not to make merry, not to make treaties with the local people. And the sharing of food and hospitality is always a beginning to people coming together, to the daughter to the son to the daughter, and so forth. This must have been a terrible blow for them to say, why do they not want to socialize with us?
I will tell you a story, brother. Now I remember it. Uh, my grandmother told me before, maybe many years ago. She told me that maybe in the year 1940, 1941, something like that.
Mhm.
Some of the Zionist people, some of the Zionist immigrants were coming, as you know, through the ships to the Palestinian coast.
Hmm.
during the so-called Jewish immigration. You know that. She
Yes.
told me I was working. When I say why, when I say I speak about my grandmother. She
Okay.
told me, she told me when I was working in our plantation, I was helping my father and my mother in uh, uh, the the irritation of the plants.
Okay.
We saw four persons. They were three ladies and one man. Of course, they were foreign, not Palestinians. They came to us, and they gave me some money. They gave me some money.
Okay.
You know,
Yes.
yeah. They gave me some money, and this money was a Polish, the money of Poland, you know,
Okay.
and and they ask me, this money is for you. We want to take some oranges. We want to take some oranges in exchange of this money.
Yes.
Uh, Directly, I refused to take money. I told the lady, please take your money. I don't need money, and you can take whatever you want from the plantation. You can take oranges, you can take onion, you can take watermelon, take whatever you want, you know. So this was our hospitality, even with those people who came from overseas to to erase us and to take this land from us. So we used to deal with them in a good way, and in fact, most of them were good with us. But unfortunately, the aggression started from the militias, from the military, the armed militias, the Irgun, the Haganah, the Shteren, the Bilmah. They started this kind of cruel action and aggression. But the people,
Yes.
the civilian people, most of them were good. Were not aggressive at all. Yeah, and they used to interact with us.
Now, let me tell you
Yes,
something.
brother.
There are many cultural connections, including maybe number one, hospitality between the Palestinians and the Cretan people, as I know them. They have always known them that way for 40 years and more. Uh, they have literally given me the sweater off their back to go up onto a high mountaintop in the wintertime. They don't ask who I am. They say we know you will bring it back. It's a beautiful, heavy winter woolen sweater. And I did. Of course, I brought it back. But this is an example of the gestures that they make. Um, there are all kinds of connections between these peoples, and it is a very ancient thing. Do you think it's as ancient, Muhammad, as the Quran, which, as we saw in earlier discussions, teaches people to treat other people with kindness and with respect and with spirituality? Uh, does that's much older than the Quran, right? In the life of Shaphir,
Yes,
there
of
is a
course.
there is a folk tradition, and then there is a religious tradition, right?
Of course, brother. This was the message of Quran, and even the message of Jesus Christ. We are
Yes.
very affected by Jesus. Even the Muslims. We consider Jesus as a great teacher. We used to follow his commandments. We used to follow his wisdom. Even the Muslims, we consider him a great leader and a great teacher, exactly like the Prophet Muhammad. So I think this is the ethics of Islam and the ethics of Jesus, the Christ. If you want to speak about Shafir, about the population, and their relation to Islam, of course, they were conservative. They were conservative. They
Conservative, yes.
Yeah, yeah, sorry, conservative. The women used to wear the scarf upon their heads, and they used to do the daily prayers, 5 prayers each day. Of course, all the people in that time were religious.
Let me ask you this, Mohammed, then. As I started to say, I was making a comparison between Cretan and Palestinian hospitality. And also, I wonder about the system of justice. The factor, is there ever crime? Do you remember any stories of crimes in Shaphir, and how were they dealt with? Here in the mountains, even today, you do not have police. You have groups of families that know each other very closely. And when someone steps out of line or causes harm or whatever it might be, the families get together and they hold proceedings that make this person accountable. And this is a much more thoroughgoing system than I think the one anything in the West has to offer, in a way, or in many ways. Mohammed, do you know if Shafir had a criminal justice system, or did they have groups of families that would take care of problems like that in the community?
Brother, we had the same system of Crete. Uh, as I told you, we had a police station, a British police station,
Yes,
but
yes. And
uh,
a Turkish
but
one
but
before
this
that.
exactly Turkish before that exactly. But this police station was mostly ignored because our elders used always to avoid
Mostly
dealing with
ignored.
those. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
like
They
that.
used. Yeah, yeah,
That's a good
yeah.
sign.
Yes, brother. Yeah, yeah, yeah. In that time, brother, we had the same system of Crete. We had the relations between the families, and let me tell you that Shafir consists of 11 families. You know, Shafir consists of 11 families. So the number of families, the Shafirian families, are 11. You know,
And
and
there was
each,
there was a mosque and a temple and a Christian church in Shapir. So those
of
11
course,
families all had a foot in one door and maybe in the other, right?
of course, and each family has a leader. This leader, we call it in Arabic Mukhtar.
Mm.
Mukhtar in English mean the selected person, the
Uh-huh.
selected. Yeah.
Okay.
This selected leader, we call him Mukhtar. This is the leader of the family. So we
That
had
they have
11
appointed.
families. Exactly, exactly. So in that time we had 11 families with 11 leaders, 11 Mukhtars, and those 11 Mukhtar used to select one of them to be the biggest one, to be the big
Hmm.
president,
Yes,
to be
yes,
the. Yeah.
sure.
So we call him the big Mukhtar. This big Mukhtar is the president of Shafir. So, to answer your question, if we had any kind of violation to the traditions, or if you had any kind of crimes, etc., in that time we had something like a court. A court.
Hmm.
This court consists of the Mukhtars. Those
Hmm.
Mukhtars used to make an assembly inside this court, and this court we call it Majlis. Majlis.
Okay. Hi, Mohammed. I think you have frozen up here. It might be temporary, so I hope our audience can hang on a moment. This is a direct function of Mohammed's low bandwidth in Gaza. It's always been the case in our Zoom connections and conversations. It seems relatively needless nowadays if you, as a civil society, want to set up adequate internet, and Gaza's has always been very weak. It's probably a wing of their program to keep Gazans from receiving books from outside, too. Another thing I wanted to ask Muhammad as I wait and hope he will come back with us is he told me already a story of the family's dispossession from Shaphir. There it is. We've lost Muhammad. So I'm going to conclude, but I want you to know next time we're going to hear first about a traditional meal, a midday meal that Muhammad's family was having one day when suddenly the Zionists with British weapons showed up at their front door and said, it's time for you to go. And if you don't, the results will be fatal. So that's what they did. But we're going to hear about that meal first. And I think it's going to make your mouth water because Muhammad described it to me once before. And then we're going to talk about that day in 1948 and the adventure that his family was then launched upon, which wound up with Muhammad himself being born as an exile in Gaza and his three children. You can see them at Jack Dempsey Writer at WordPress.com. Jack Dempsey Writer at WordPress.com. I want to thank you very much for listening and for bearing with our technical, primitive state of things, but it's not necessary. As you can see, the Greek end of it works pretty well. Please contact your own government and demand changes that in your government's policies that support and or at least indifferent to Israeli apartheid, because the Palestinian people are suffering under that. Please think about family to family, some kind of direct connection to offer them some help over the wall of their terrible confinement, 15 years and more. And that's it for now. But I want to thank you very sincerely for listening in, putting up with these issues. And I hope you've enjoyed hearing about the incredible civilization that was Shaphir in Palestine before 1948. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll see you very soon next time with lots of good material to come. Bye-bye.